So welcome to this episode of Locked In. In this episode, I'm going to be starting my first mountain bike build series on this channel. So if you're looking to see how I wanted to build my first carbon custom painted hardtail, this video series is for you. Please stay tuned and subscribe if you haven't already. So basically in this series, I'm going to be breaking it up into multiple parts before doing the full build reveal video. So in this video, I'm going to be going over my frame set and fork options and why I went with them and how I'm trying to basically build my ultimate carbon softtail, hardtail mountain bike. So let's kick off this video series with the beautiful frame set that I just recently finished painting that I'm super stoked with how it came out. I'll be doing a custom paint video later about how I did this paint job as well as my Cobalt Marauder, since I basically tried different unique techniques using basic household items to achieve a really rad paint job. And I have to tell you, and I'm going to say this multiple times in this video series, this video does not do this paint job justice, and I'll do my best to film some beauty shots to really get you the idea of how this paint looks in person, because the metallic is so crazy. And I tried a different technique using actually saran wrap and basically layering different colors along the frame using Tropical Glitz paint, which is a non-profit that helps support the channel and these two paint jobs. I'll have a link for the description below if you're looking for custom paint for any of your bike build projects or any others. So what is this frame? This is a Cobalt Diablo 29er frame set. Cobalt provided this frame set for me, but they're by no means paying me for this series. But they do have two different hardtail options, and if you're interested in picking one up, I'll have a link in the description below for their website, as well as my discount code. Use code LOCKEDIN and save some money on this frame set. Now the cool thing with Cobalt bikes is they do also offer custom builds with a couple different group set options, wheel set options. Obviously the bike comes in different sizes, so you could customize this and get it out the door with their set paint schemes or even a custom option. So check that out in the links below. So I wanted to go with the 29er because they do offer a 27.5 Plus version of this frame set, but around here in Southern California, I think a 29er is just more well suited for the areas that I like riding, and I'm not going to be doing any crazy downhilling or enduro riding. So I figured getting a rigid 29er is going to suit my riding style and area the best. But if you're looking for more tire clearance, again, check the links for the other option in the 27.5 Plus. So to make this a soft tail, like I mentioned before, we'll be getting into that in another part of this build series of what's going to soften up the rear end for me and add versatility as well. So stay tuned for that. I did go with the size large, which is their 19-inch frame set. Based on other mountain bikes that I've demoed before, I figured this was going to be the best for me. I'm about 5'11", and I do have kind of a long reach with a little bit of shorter leg. My standover height is about 31 inches, so this bike might be a little bit tall for me, but I really didn't want a really short medium frame set where I'd have to go really long in the stem. So we're going to see how that plans out. Again, I measured this stack and reach geometry numbers versus some other bikes that I've tested and like the sizing of. You're going to see a stem on this bike, and this is just basically a placeholder to keep the fork from falling out. This is a fun stem in a 55 millimeter length. Probably going to build the bike with that length and then vary up the stem length based on what I kind of feel and like. But this is based on rough reach numbers I think I'm going to prefer on a mountain bike. But again, it is my first build, so we're going to be trialing this out. Probably won't need any longer than this, so I figured obviously shorter is a lot easier than having to recable hydraulic lines or shifter lines on this bike later down the line. Now we're getting onto the fork. I went with a tried and true, kind of middle of the road, I would say. There's definitely a lot nicer, but this is, again, I wanted this series to be just testing out products that are on a lot of mountain bikes that you're either building yourself or giving you a budget option for a mountain bike fork. Because realistically, in my opinion, this is what really defines the ride quality, especially on a hardtail. So I went with the RockShox Judy. This frame set in the 29er setup is designed around 120 mil fork, and that's what I went with. It is an air shock, so I can adjust this based on my body weight, which I will do obviously once the bike is built. I felt like this fork had the best range of options, especially for the price point, because you could spend honestly what this frame set costs on a fork very easily, and I just don't have the budget for anything really crazier than this at the moment. But maybe later down the line, if I can get another fork on there, I can compare what a entry mid-level fork is compared to a higher end fork. So typically the RockShox Judy is going to come on your production bikes, typically in that $1,200 to $1,600 range. So I figured it was a good middle ground to start with because, again, this is my first bike build. Now, as far as the frame set goes, the specs on this, it is a post-mount frame that's spec'd around 160 mil rotors. In the rear, it does have a 31.6 seat post. It is routed for a dropper seat post. It has 2 spots for water bottles in the frame set, which I really wanted. It is through axle boost spacing in the rear with a 12 millimeter axle, and the fork is going to be a 15 millimeter boost axle. The axles are provided with the frame set for the rear, and the fork does come with a front axle as well. All the other hardware is included with the frame set, including your seat clamp, all the covers and ports you're going to need for all the cable routing. and the bottom bracket is a BB92. Now that is the only thing I'd have to say on this frame set I wish I could change. Maybe in the next iteration, if Cobalt can do that with this frame set, that's the only thing right now as of pre-building this that I would change, because I prefer a threaded bottom bracket, either a standard BSA or a T47. But you'll see later what crankset I went with and what bottom bracket I went with to go with that. And obviously, as I do my long-term review for this frame set after getting some miles on it, after the build, I'll be letting you know how I got on with a press fit bottom bracket, because I haven't had one in quite a while. And lastly, for tire clearance on this frame set, it is stated to run a 2.35 with plenty of mud clearance. Talking about the tire size I went with in the last one, because there's not a lot of mud here in California, so I did bump it up just a little bit, and I'll obviously give you my results on how much space this thing can actually run. I may be doing a mullet style setup later down the line, maybe run a staggered setup that a lot of people do, running a little bit bigger of a front tire, but we'll find that out later down the build series. So that's the start to this video series. I'm super excited with how this thing looks and the part spec that I got. I think it's a good range of budget options, as well as, availability still with COVID is very difficult. I found a few alternatives that, again, I'll be adding to this channel for long-term reviews on, is this an option? So I know this frame set's pretty high-end. It does come in at about $12.99, but again, check the code in the description below to get a discount on that. But I wanted a good foundation for the future. This whole build series is probably going to be version 1. I eventually would like to test out other parts and get into mountain biking more, so this is going to be a good baseline, and I wanted to go, again, like I mentioned with the fork, somewhat of a more middle of the range, affordable option that's not going to totally break the bank. And I understand the carbon frame set kind of goes away from that, but this is a great foundation to, again, grow with the bike, and as I improve the other components, the frame set is not going to be the low point, which is typically, besides the fork, the most expensive part to replace. So I hope you like this series. Please comment in the comments below if you have any questions about this frame set or my setup here. I check my comments every single day, as well as give this video a like if you haven't already. It really does help out get this build series out to more and more people. In the next part of this build series, we're going to be going over my gear options and wheel set choice for this bike build, then into drivetrain, and lastly into cockpit and accessories. So if you want to follow me, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Links for that are in the description below, as well as links for my Spreadshirt with my Slow But Look Pro merch, as well as my Patreon to help support this channel so I can produce more videos every single week. And lastly, thanks for watching this episode of Locked In.
Let's get locked in today. Like tutorials and quick and fix tips.